even if you're not selling, even if you haven't started selling yet, if you're not teaching, if you're not participating in shows, when you start doing that, all of those relationships that you formed will just, it will catch fire.
Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Art Journey Podcast, the podcast where we explore artists' journeys and popular topics in art to help you on your own path. And I'm your host, Alex Agosto, and happy holidays, guys. As I'm recording this, it is currently Christmas Eve. Probably when you guys hear this, it's the day after Christmas, but man, it's been such a happy week. I'm off on vacation. I went to New Jersey to visit my boyfriend's family, and we've been having such a nice time. I actually moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana from New Jersey last year, so it's been so nice to be back for pretty much the first time since I left. But I hope you guys are having a nice time with your families, regardless of whether or not you celebrate these winter holidays. I just hope you're having a nice, cozy time in this cold, cold season. Or if you're somewhere else in the world in summer, I hope you found a nice little AC unit to sit by. But anyways, it's the holiday season, and I know I'm just going to get this out of the way at the beginning. But if you want to give me a nice gift that'll make me super duper happy, it would be so appreciated if you just took 1 second right now out of your time to rate the podcast and leave a little review telling people what you like about it. It would help me out a lot because it makes it easier for people to find the podcast and have it be heard by artists from around the world. And I just want to help more people discover the stories of these amazing artists that I'm interviewing week by week so that I can help you and other people out on their art journeys. So, speaking of journeys, today we have a really exciting interview. I am interviewing my first kind of traditional painter. Her name is Acacia Rogers, and guys, this story you're about to hear is just gonna blow your mind. It's this fast-paced, super exciting story about how a girl who was working as a manager at a pet store within 1 year became the assistant of a very prolific painter and a gallery owner. And it's just so mind-blowing how far your life can take a turn in 1 short year, which is what I was talking about. Like, time is precious, and sometimes the smallest step or even the thing that you thought was going to ruin your life actually ends up being the thing that changes your life for the better. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, Acacia is going to tell her all about her story, so why don't we give her a big, warm Art Journey welcome. Hi, everyone. So without further ado, I am here with my new friend, Acacia. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Did I pronounce your name right this time again?
Yep, you got it, Acacia.
Okay, I said it and I was like, oh no, she just said this name and I butchered it already.
Everybody does. It's all good.
So, I like to start the episode asking everyone a very similar question.
Mhm.
I know that every artist says that they got their start in art when they were young. Is that true for you too?
I would say yes, because even though I had no future aspiration for art and I had no skill, I doodled compulsively all over my math homework. So I would say that qualifies. And then proceeded to graduate to actual blank pieces of paper later on.
That totally qualifies. So, as a kid, what did you like drawing, or what got you into drawing?
Actually, probably the first ever artistic inspiration I can remember is Disney, because I watched a million Disney movies when I was a kid over and over and over, and I just love the art style of them. Lion King particularly, Aaron Blaise was one of the main animators on that movie, and I just love him, and I still follow him in his drawing courses to this day. But definitely Disney was my first inspiration. So animals, because they have a lot of animal characters. I drew
Yes.
tons of animals all the time, much as I could.
Yeah, and I feel like I can see that in your current work as well.
Yeah, if you saw my early stuff, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is like Disney wannabe hardcore.
And so when did you start taking art seriously?
So I started taking myself and my art seriously probably about a decade ago, and I'm about 28 now, so I was probably 16, 17 at the time when I started to really try to bring myself up to a level that I wanted to be, or I kind of began that journey. And that was actually the first time I ever painted, because before then I was just drawing with graphite and occasional colored pencils and crayons, nothing serious, just for fun. But I had always envied the color and depth and diversity of paintings and work with solid layers of opaque color and the lighting effects they could create and everything. And I felt limited obviously with just a pencil and colored pencils and things like that, even though people do amazing art with colored pencils, but I didn't know that at the time. So that was probably my first actual painting, and it was in acrylics when I was 17, and I couldn't believe that I liked what I did because I didn't think I could paint. And then that just fueled the fire, and I just kept practicing every little bit of it that worked. And I did primarily acrylics and a little bit of watercolor for probably about 7 or 8 years, and then the last couple of years I've started dabbling in oil painting, and that's what really kind of refined my style and kind of boosted my skill building.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's funny because I feel like I haven't heard that many people who got their start in acrylic, which is so funny because like I myself started in acrylic as well, and actually the person I just interviewed earlier today, her name is Danielle Boynet. She
Hmm.
also did a lot of acrylic art when she was younger, so it's always nice to hear about other people who got their start in it.
Yeah, it's a less intimidating medium. It is cheaper to acquire, and you don't have to worry about solvents or mediums or anything. You just need the paint and water. So I was definitely afraid of oil paints for a stupid reason, but I was afraid of oil paints when I was younger because I was like, oh, it's messy, it smells weird, all these chemicals, and so I had just avoided it for a very long time.
Yeah, same here, and I just have always avoided it.
Yeah.
So, on that vein, did you, after taking it seriously and you kind of knew that you wanted to do it for a living, did you move on into going to art school?
I didn't. I kind of figured out early on that and this was due to my parents too, kind of drilling the idea into my head, that a lot of art degrees unfortunately don't have much financial return,
Mhm.
except for very select fields. And that, nowadays, especially with the internet, people do a much better job kind of building their own art business, just through practice and sharing and, talking with other artists. So I kind of was pretty confident that if I wanted to build an art career, or an art driven life, that I wouldn't really need college to do that, especially since I was just shooting for fine art painting. I wasn't going for marketing or business or design, which, college would have helped me much more in that department, I feel.
Mhm. So, what did you do then out of high school?
I was always maintaining part-time or full-time, usually retail or food service jobs. I actually
Mhm.
primarily did pet retail for a very long time
Cool.
because I'm really pet savvy. I love animals. Obviously, I've always had a bunch of pets, and I became really proficient in pet nutrition. And I kind of became an expert in that. But as much as I loved helping people with that sort of thing and being involved in that, I was miserable working retail. And
Mhm.
I'd always kind of dabbled back and forth with the idea of doing art full time. I just obviously, the fear of God was put in me with, not having the financial stability that comes with that and having no idea how to start or what to do or, how like one even begins to build financial stability with art. So I'd kind of gone back and forth, but I was primarily in retail until this last year, actually. I got fired
Oh.
from my last conventional job. I think that was around October or September of
Mhm.
2017. I was actually a manager at a pet supply store, and it was probably the best money and the most stability I ever had. But I really was miserable. I didn't like working in that industry because people can be very catty, and everybody's got their opinions with animals. You know how it is. And then
Oh, yeah.
the customers like were always stressing and the employees didn't like their job, and it was hard to kind of keep the morale up. And when my own morale was so low, especially since that wasn't my calling. I always knew that I wanted to be a painter. I was just too afraid. So
Mm-hmm.
I think getting fired was probably the kick in the butt that I really needed. um, because after that I was like, okay, like no better time than now.
Yeah. So then how did you get started? You got fired. You had not
Right.
had any jobs that had to do with art. So how
Hmm.
did you go like, all right, well, I'm gonna then give this a go. Like what were your first steps?
So it was actually a series of fortunate events, and basically a string of following my gut instincts and it paying off every time. And this is really something, anybody who's listening, I want to leave them with this. Um, you know, go searching for opportunities and put yourself out there, and like the good fortune will come. So what happened was, when I got fired, I was both stressed out but also excited, because I knew the journey I was about to take on, or try to take on, even though I didn't have a particular direction. So I posted on Facebook about it, what was going on, what had just happened, that I was, all gung-ho and going full blown with this journey. So because I did that, one of my fiance's family members had messaged me and said that she had a relative that passed away that was a painter, and she had a bunch of old painting supplies that she didn't know what to do with because she didn't know any
Mm-hmm.
painters. So, and I live in Manchester, New Hampshire, and she lives in Laconia, which is about 45 minutes north. So it's not an area I frequent, because I hate
Mm-hmm.
commuting. I hate driving long distances all the time. Now I do it a lot, but at the time I hated it. So it was really great that she did that, because otherwise I wouldn't have been to that area. And don't worry, I'm leading into something, even though it sounds like I'm rambling. So I go there to pick up these art supplies, which, is great because I had no income at the time, and art supplies are incredibly expensive. And I knew if I was going to be producing a lot of art, I'd need a lot of supplies.
Mm-hmm.
And these were actually the first oil painting supplies I had received, which is why I began oil painting, because I got all of this stuff for free and I wasn't going to not use it. Uh,
Yeah.
so I go there and I pick up the supplies, and when we tried to leave to drive back home, and it's again a 45-minute drive minimum, it was raining buckets, like the heaviest rain I'd ever seen in my entire life. There was no physical way we were going to attempt to drive home in that. So we asked her, we said, what's in the area that we can visit to kill time? And of course, it was a Sunday. It was like 4:30 on a Sunday, so we didn't have a whole lot of time left before everything closed. Or
Mm.
maybe it was 5 or sometime after 5. And she said there was a local art gallery. Wow, that's ironic. So we were like, okay, great. We'll zip over there and we'll hang out there until the rain stops. So she tells us where it is. We drive to the gallery. We walk maybe like 20 feet from our parking spot to the door. We're soaking wet. Like,
Oh my
you can see
God.
straight through our clothes. It's ridiculous. So we walk in there, and the employees were really enthusiastic, and the art was great. It was great because it was really varied, but it wasn't like a conventional, traditional art gallery where everything is super high end and everything is really high priced. So I kind of got
Mm-hmm.
the feeling that this was more of a beginner's gallery, or more of a kind of an open-minded
Oh.
gallery, which I was
Mm-hmm.
stoked about, because obviously I had no gallery experience, and I didn't have a huge body of work, and I knew that to get into a traditional gallery, I wouldn't have a shot yet. I'd have to work at that. So I
Mm-hmm.
inquired. I was like, "Hey, what does it take to like get in here?" And they were like, "Oh, it's easy. It's only $25 a month to rent selling space, and it's only $25 a year to be part of the association." This was a co-op gallery, so it was part of an arts
Yeah.
association. And I was like, "Oh, flippin' terrific!" And I was just so stoked, and I joined immediately, and I didn't, skip a beat. And basically, because I had joined that association and gotten into that gallery, I had a small foot in the door as to like experience what it's like to sell art, or to participate in an art group, to participate in art events. All of these things I had never done before. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, I did everything in that association that I could. I participated in the shows. I actually got involved in the board. I became the vice president of the association a couple months later,
Oh my God.
because I'm crazy. But I wanted to do everything that I could. And I wanted to experience everything I could. I wanted to jump out of my comfort zone and just really put myself out there, because I had a feeling. I had a feeling that if I did that, then good things would come, and that I would somehow be discovered or appreciated, or opportunities would present themselves to me. So I gave it my all. And basically the biggest turning point after that was I had participated in a show where it was called the Mystery Bag Challenge show, where we basically got a bag of random items and had to choose 8 of them and turn them into some kind of artwork. Some people made dolls, some people did collage, and some people did paintings. And I arranged the items with other items and made a cool still life. And then I painted it. And I decided that when I was going to do this, because this was the first real art show I was going to participate in, I was going to give this painting everything I had. It wasn't going to be a very sellable piece, but I was going to exhibit every aspect of my skill that I could in this painting. I think it was a 16 by 20. And it's it's on my my Facebook and my website too. I think it's called The Still Life or something like that, or Colors of Life. I forget what I titled it, but I basically put about 100 hours into this painting. Just to, I'm like, okay, here I am. This is what I can do. Like, give me something. And exactly what I was hoping for essentially happened. One of the other members of the association, who was very business savvy, very nice woman, decided to sponsor me and kind of kickstart me on painting workshops and kind of, fill me in on kind of how to get started in the business aspect of this world. And it was through the workshop she had sponsored for me, which I ordinarily would not have been able to afford on my own, because again, I had no, free-flowing cash and no expendable income. And because I partook in this workshop, I met Todd Bonita, who is a prolific Portsmouth artist. And if you Google his name, I mean, he has a really popular art school. He works with a lot of other well-known artists, and he owns 2 galleries. So I was participating in his class, and because I had been participating in his workshops, I was able to become his assistant, which is what I'm doing now. And I know that it sounds like this is like all going very, very fast. Basically, it's because I met him that I am where I am now, and there's more details on that, but I don't want to, ramble continually.
No, I mean, feel free. This is like amazing stuff because this all has happened in 1 year, right?
Basically, yeah. I think October, September of last year to now. So yeah, this is all within the span of a year. So I mean, because I had become his actually, let me explain how I became his assistant. I feel like this would really be helpful to somebody who doesn't have direction yet. When I had participated in the first workshop, I loved his energy and the way he taught so much that when I found out he would have another one coming up only a couple of weeks later, I was like, okay, I got to sign up for this, and I added my name to the roster immediately, and I scraped up our dollars, and I think I sacrificed a couple of bills in order to be able to pay for this workshop. So I got into that second workshop, and it was that second workshop was a really good opportunity because there were less people in it, which meant that we all got to meet each other. We all got to talk, and he was able to give more individualized attention, which is harder to do when you have a bigger class. You can't really have one-on-one personal time with anybody. So because this was a smaller class, we actually sat down and took quite a bit of time to introduce ourselves. And when he asked me to introduce myself, I basically told him my whole story, how I got fired, how I was determined to make this thing happen. How I had, he calls it burning my boats. So I guess how I had burned all my boats and I was not turning back and I was sacrificing everything to make this work. And he was very inspired by that, I guess. And he had tried to take on assistants in the past and tried to mentor people, but they kind of didn't have that fire. They didn't want to stick to it, or they didn't want to deal with the financial and business aspect of art, because a lot of us artists are like that. We hate numbers, we hate math, we hate business, and we think money is this like disgusting thing. And but I was under no illusion that you can be successful at this and not be somewhat business savvy. So he just really kind of liked what I had to say, and he offered to mentor me, and I've been, working for him a couple times a week ever since. And because I started working for him, I met a lot of the other prolific artists and the gallery owners and other people that participate in the workshops in that area, which is great because Portsmouth and the areas in which he operates are really, really kind of art driven. There's a lot of art appreciators, a lot of people with money. And a lot to do in the arts. So I got into a Portsmouth gallery because of that as well, and I've had some pretty good sales there.
Wow, that's just, you've had like an adventure this year.
I really did. I've done so many things I thought I would never do. It's bananas. Like I imagined where I'd want to be like a year ago. I thought like, oh, how great it would be to be here, here, and here in like a year. And I'm twice as far as I ever thought that I could be, and I can't believe it. And it's because I swallowed my fear and I put myself out there, and I gave everything I had, regardless of what the consequences would be, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it really kind of jettisoned me forward and put me right where I wanted to be.
Yeah, that's amazing. I do feel that, especially when it comes to art, I think what holds most people back is the fear.
Hmm.
And I think like to be in this and do it well, you cannot let the fear, you can have the fear, but you still have to, take action. You have to do it scared. So, and as an assistant, what does that look like? Like, what are you doing?
So imagine, have you ever seen The Devil Wears Prada?
Yes.
It's funny. I like doing what I've been doing. It makes me think of that. It's literally like being so trusted by this person that you do everything for them that they don't have time for. So that goes from getting the chocolates or strawberries for his wife on their anniversary to transporting paintings back and forth, helping to hang shows, emailing his students and his clients, shipping checks, receiving checks, recording
Mhm.
finances, basically all of the non-painting things that a painter doesn't really want to be doing, I'm there to help. And because of that, it
Mm.
obviously can increase our productivity. We can kind of build things together a little easier. He has those extra hands, he has those extra hours to give. It's hard to run the businesses he's running and
Mm.
still find time to paint, because he is, even though he owns galleries and an art school, he is first and foremost a painter.
Of course. And so, how do you find time to create your own art?
So since I only work for him a couple days a week, and then I have meetings for the association a couple times a month, and then at my new gallery where I'm in, I put shifts in there weekly. There's usually 2 or 3 varying free days within the week that I try to kind of get it in. Also, thankfully, because the gallery I'm in is so fun and so loose, they allow me to paint there during my shifts, so I can
Ooh,
spend that entire shift painting if I want to. And also, because I'm Todd's assistant, I can participate in a lot of workshops for free, which is good painting time.
that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, if for whatever reason I can't find the at-home time, I'm usually finding other opportunities within my work to paint.
That's amazing that you have that opportunity. I feel like that's the dream right there.
I love it. Oh my god, I can't even tell you. There was a time a few months back, I think it was during the summer, when I was participating in one of Todd's first plein air workshops, which means painting outside, and I was
Mhm.
very new to painting outside. It is hard, but it is fun. We got to Mount Agamenticus in Maine, and we climbed the mountain. Well, I climbed the mountain. Everybody else drove because I didn't know you could drive. So I've got my painting gear on my back, and I took like a 20-30 minute hike to the top, and I set up my stuff, sweating bullets, trying to get my painting done before the critique meetup, and it was bananas. And then I get over there with my painting, and I walk over to the picnic tables where we're meeting, and there's a parking lot, and I'm like, you can drive up here. But
Oh my god.
when I was doing that, when I was painting, sweating bullets, the bugs getting in my paint and the wind blasting in my face, and like struggling to make anything that looked good, I was like, it's the most alive I've ever felt. It's the happiest I've ever been. And I feel so happy to be able to spend my time doing that.
Yeah, it's always, I feel like, such an honor when you can dedicate your life to doing exactly what you want to do with it.
Right.
And so, for people who haven't seen your work, how would you describe it? Like, what do you like to work with themes wise, and what's your style, things like that?
Well, I've definitely tried to branch out as far as subject matter, and jump out of my comfort zone there. It used to be primarily animals, pets, wildlife, but I've experimented with still life, landscape, and portraiture more because I want to be diverse. I want to be able to feel like I could paint anything that's asked of me. But
Mm-hmm.
style wise, it's definitely more traditional, more realism. It used to be kind of tighter. I used to kind of noodle over the details. But plein air has really kind of helped me loosen up. So now I've kind of acquired a more loose painterly style, but it's very strongly
Mm-hmm.
representational. I like to paint something, an identifiable particular thing, um, because I've always kind of appreciated the beauty in life and in nature and all of the kind of different ways that light interacts with items and the way that living things interact with each other, and it's always, I think, going to be my mission to portray that. So I'm definitely not much of an abstract person myself. um, but I still will see the occasional abstract that's really done by someone who knows what they're doing, and I definitely can appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I myself have found myself I appreciate abstract art, but it's hard for me to find abstract art that resonates with me because I also kind of enjoy portraying things as they are.
Hmm.
My art is also very I like to say straightforward, I like to capture things kind of how they are. I'll usually play around with color and things like that.
Right.
But I also like to kind of capture the beauty of what a thing is.
Right.
But I actually recently I found a local artist here in Baton Rouge who does this gorgeous, gorgeous abstract art. Very much inspired by like oceans.
Hmm.
And so she captures like the look of water and that movement and kind of the life in water, with like different shades of blues and like golds, and that's like the first time that I was like really like impressed by abstract art because it, like you said, it's abstract art where you can tell that the artist is doing everything very intentionally. Her
Right.
name
Yeah.
is, I believe her name is Brittany Lee. I will definitely post that
Mm.
on the show notes, but I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, you can tell when, especially the artists that came from a traditional background or a scholastic background, and then they move into abstract art. You can tell the difference because their colors and their shapes and their movement is definitely intentionally placed to kind of it makes you think of something that is in existence, but it's not visually identifiable as that object, which I think is an amazing effect to create. I think that's harder than creating good realism, is creating an abstract that reminds you of something that exists.
Totally. I sometimes can't wrap my head around it. It's not in my hands to create abstract art, but I get so impressed when I see someone pulling it off like that successfully.
Right.
So, going back to your work. So, you work largely as an assistant, but you did mention that, you've been also selling your own work, right?
Right, yeah, out of the galleries that I've joined, and then I do occasionally do commissions too. I have on my website, I have a whole guidelines for commissions, and I actually started out. The first paintings I ever sold was because I went to my friends and family and coworkers and asked if they wanted a painting of their dog or something. Um, s-
Oh.
so I started out with commissions, so and I still affectionately do them, and I offer them, but it doesn't come as often as it used to.
Yeah. So, your art, you sell it mainly, you'd say, through galleries?
Right now, yeah, I'd say most of what I'm selling now is through the Portsmouth gallery that I'm in.
That's really cool. I actually haven't spoken to any artists that sell in galleries. And the impression that people have with gallery art, or not gallery art, but selling art in galleries, is that, it's so hard to break into it, right?
Depends. Yeah, it definitely that was my first kind of inhibition, but it definitely depends on the gallery because, like I said, that first co-op gallery I got into, they didn't care what you were making. They didn't want to charge you commission or an expensive fee to be a part of it. So if you look
Wow.
in the right places, if you know what to look for, there's a foot in the door to be made. And then if you can get into an inexpensive co-op gallery like that, that's experience and bodies of work you can build to apply to a more traditional sort of higher end gallery later down the line, because that's the hardest thing getting into a traditional gallery is when you don't have a body of work and when you don't have selling experience. So because then it's a risk on their part to take you on because you're more likely to lose them money or lose them space than to gain them money.
Yeah. That's actually really good advice because I myself didn't even know that galleries like that existed. So I can imagine a lot of the people that are listening haven't either.
Right. So yeah, what you want to look for is co-ops or arts associations. Your local art association. Usually they have a space like that. Some of them are a little more ritzy than others. Some of them are a little harder to get into, but then some of them are very laid back. So I would just say, research your local co-ops and see what you can work with. The only real kicker, other than that, is that the price for some can be a lot more than what I paid. For example, I paid $25 a year to be a part of the association as a whole and $25 a month to sell in there. So, and not every
Hmm.
place will be that cheap. So I would just, and search and inquire.
Yeah. I mean, I'm writing these things down for myself.
I'm glad to help.
Yeah, no, seriously. That's just the kind of reputation that galleries have. I feel like and you'll hear it possibly a couple times on this podcast and other episodes that people's perception of getting into a gallery is like, oh, that's only for like the elite of the elite. That's so hard to do. I'll never be able to do that. But you're presenting some very viable options for people who want to dip their toes in it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you live in New York, I mean, there's no hope for you.
Oh
That is all
yeah.
high end ritzy galleries. But everywhere else they're a little more open. There's definitely the artsy towns, and there's the more laid back towns. I mean, funny example: the street called Ceres Street in Portsmouth, where the gallery that I'm in is on the same street as one of Todd's galleries, and Todd would never let me in his gallery, at least not for a few decades, because he only takes well-known big name artists. Whereas the gallery I'm in, the art it's of a good quality, but it's definitely varied, and you don't have to be famous or have a good following to be in there. So even on that one street in that single town, there's differences between how the galleries are run.
Yeah, and I will say New York also does have a couple of, galleries along that line. I mean, it's still, I will say, can be expensive because just New York is New
Oh
York,
gosh,
but
yeah.
when I went yeah, I went to art school in New York,
Mm.
for a completely random major. I was a jewelry design major.
Oh.
But a lot of my art classes, like my professors and stuff, would make us go to these really tiny local galleries,
Mhm.
down in Chelsea, and I could totally see people with not the typical high end art being in there. It's just because when you live in places like, and not to discourage anyone who does, but if you live in places like New York City or like San Francisco, these places where like it's very highly art centric and very much, based on value.
Mm.
It's just expensive because of real estate. Real estate's
Yeah.
honestly the biggest thing,
Yeah.
and because of real estate, it's hard to get into these galleries because it's such precious space.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they expect a lot of you. You have to almost be a high value person to be in such a high value place. It's bananas.
Exactly. And so I guess exploring kind of other aspects of your art journey, have you, other than painting in galleries and being an assistant, are there any other ways that you kind of involve yourself in art or other things you do within these jobs that
Um,
maybe people wouldn't think?
Oh, well, there is the participating in, shows whenever I have the opportunity, but I'm going to start teaching workshops soon. I have a
Ooh.
surgery coming up, so I'm just waiting until after that because I don't want to try to make a schedule and commit to it until
Yeah.
after that's, I know how that goes. Um, but yeah, I do want to start teaching painting workshops, at least beginner workshops in various mediums. And I think that will probably occupy most of my time and bring in most of my revenue.
Yeah. So that's really cool to hear. A lot of so one of the things that the internet golden age has brought us
Hmm.
is social media, right?
Right.
And I feel like everybody's number one concern, especially young artists or not necessarily young artists, but people who are just now getting into art, are concerned that you can't make a living off of it if you don't have a giant following online. Honestly, a lot of the people that I'm bringing on do have followings, and I feel like it kind of does scare people off because they think they can never do it. But
Hmm.
you're showing people that there are alternate, routes into it.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, a big following helps. I will say I have an online presence, but I don't have a big following. When a year ago when I had started this, I was under the impression that I would have to do that to have any
Mhm.
significant success. So I have a YouTube channel and I have my Facebook and Instagram that I'm active on, but that didn't accelerate me as much as what I had done in person, in my local communities. And definitely, I mean, consistency on platforms such as YouTube and Instagram, it has its rewards. It definitely does. It's more difficult now because of how the algorithms have changed and how they favor clickbait and viral rather than consistency. But you can still get a following on there. But nothing, makes a positive impact as much as a face-to-face interaction. Which I know that being artists, we're introverts and we're terrified of that. I have stage fright myself, but you gotta there there's not a lot of artistic success that can come from hiding in a basement. You have to talk to people and you have to be marketable. People are buying the artist as much as they're buying the artwork in their hand. So if they like you, even if they wouldn't have bought your art before that point, they're more likely to buy it now if they know who you are and they kind of get what you're about and they like your personality. Maybe they like your face, maybe they like how you present yourself, something that they took away from your face-to-face interaction. It will stick with them, and your art will mean that much more to them because of it.
Definitely. And like you said, you echoed something that somebody that I interviewed a couple days ago said, that your interactions do matter, especially for example, artists that work conventions.
Hmm.
A lot of times you go to these conventions and you go to artists' booths and they're just kind of almost hiding behind the booth, behind a sketchbook and not interacting. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it does influence whether or not you're like inclined to purchase because a lot of what art is the person who created it,
Mm.
a lot of people don't think that's as important as it is, but art is such a personal thing that you want to know the person behind it and you want to like the person behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it tightens your relationship with that person buying their art and then interacting with them. But, the world of fan art, which I think is largely what exists in conventions, it's kind of a different
Mhm.
thing because people, before they go to a convention, they like what they like. And if you have created something that speaks to their strong interests that brought them to that convention, they're more likely to buy it.
Mhm.
But again, like you said, if you're not interacting with them, you are relying on your art to sell itself. And to the best of my knowledge, there aren't a lot of artists that have set up a booth in those conventions that walk away with a lot of money.
Exactly. And a lot of times I feel like it's because they're not I mean, I think a lot of people forget that just because you're an artist doesn't mean you stop being like you stop wearing the other hats involved
Yeah.
in running your own art.
Yeah.
You also have to, even if you're not strictly running your own business, you still have to be a salesperson for yourself. And that means, kind of selling yourself and, making people like you as well.
Right. And then if you do manage to form good relationships within the art community, even if you're not selling, even if you haven't started selling yet, if you're not teaching, if you're not participating in shows, when you start doing that, all of those relationships that you formed will just, it will catch fire. Because people will already know who you are, and they'll say, "Oh, I like that person. I definitely want to check out their work, or I'd love to buy something of theirs now that they're selling, or I'd love to watch their videos, or whatever it is you're doing." So there's
Mhm.
always benefits from forming positive relationships, and then there's of course the business benefits. Meeting people who know something about marketing, or know like where's the best places to sell, where's the best places to paint, where do you get the good art supplies, how do you do video editing, or how best to photograph your artwork, where do you get the good frames. I can't even tell you the connections that Todd has given me in all of these areas I knew nothing about. I didn't even know how to frame my artwork. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how workshops were structured, and I didn't know how to, record your finances for the tax guy, because running your own business, you got to do your own taxes. Terrifying, but you got to do
Oh
it.
man, I know.
And I've learned all of that because of being his assistant. And oh my God, I'm so relieved because I was scared. I was very scared.
Yeah. So, I guess, would you say that kind of being an assistant or even like having a mentor, would you say that that's something you suggest for other people?
Absolutely. I think if there's somewhere you want to be, or a kind of artist, or whatever your craft is, if there's a place you want to be with that, find somebody who is where you want to be and learn from them. Even if they won't let you in as much as Todd has let me in, like see what you can gain from them, see what they're doing, figure out their practices, and kind of incorporate that. Not copy them completely, but incorporate some of what they're doing into your practice, and pull whatever you can from the more successful or more kind of put together people, more experienced people, and put it together in your own kind of working flavor concoction. And I will add too, I believe that most of the um, masters that we know of, Rembrandt, and who is it, Vasquez, and but most of those artists that we're very familiar with,
Mhm.
um, they were somebody's assistant at one
Mhm.
point. That's actually one of the ways I think that people really got their start back in the day before the internet, was um, they apprenticed as a master's assistant, and they learned the
Mhm.
trade and got the connections through them. And then once they came of age, or once they had refined or honed their own craft, they were that much more set up to go out in the world on their own and make their own success.
Yeah, definitely. Which I think is something a lot of people forget. Every master was a beginner,
Right, absolutely.
and they had to have learned from someone. I mean, we are kind of living in an age that is infamous for people thinking that the only validity in you being a good artist is two extremes. You
Mm.
either had to have gone to art school and done the 9 yards of like, doing the whole quote unquote real experience, or the whole other opposite side where it's like you have to be completely self-taught. Like, haven't you, like, noticed that?
there's definitely some polarizing schools of thought, but I think
Mhm.
it's more prominent nowadays. People are starting to figure out that you know they're people are going into debt, going to art schools, and getting nothing back for it. So I think people are kind of a little more in the school of thought that you don't need art school, and that you don't have to paint in any particular style either, because there's a
Mhm.
market for everybody. Um, but I mean, most of the artists that I know right now that are really great, especially the ones I'm interacting with, they are self-taught. Not a lot of them went to
Mhm.
art school. And, art schools nowadays too, they're not really teaching the traditional principles. They're not giving you the fundamentals and the foundation that they used to. Maybe in Italy and France, there's still some really
Mhm.
great art schools, but most of the American ones, they're pushing abstract expressionism and, kind of like breaking the mold and creating something completely unique, which is a great thing to do on your own. But I don't feel like abstract expressionism can be taught because it should come from within you and not from what a
Mhm.
teacher told you to do. So it's a very strange thing to me. I feel like if an art school should be teaching what can be taught in art, which is the scholastic principles and fundamentals, and should not be kind of jumping ahead a decade and telling you to break all the rules before you've even learned them.
Exactly. That's why I think there are definitely certain majors where when I hear people say they wanna go into, I'm like, "Ugh, you should really rethink that." One of them, and again, I hope I'm not offending anyone, but you have to really think about it before you take on something like a fine art major
Hmm.
because, that is one of those, degrees that is very expensive and not everybody gets out of it what they put into it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there are other majors that are more known for having strong teachings in the fundamentals, and this also goes school by school. Different
Hmm.
schools have different curriculums, some are better than others.
Hmm.
But I think things that merit more maybe going to art school are things like graphic design, where you have to combine the fundamentals of design along with the lessons of using the digital tools for them, you know?
But you know what I would recommend probably if somebody was searching for
Mhm.
direction from an art school type setting, look for ones that
Mhm.
have business classes in their curriculum,
Yes.
because that will help you astronomically much more than any of the more creative aspects of the course. And if you could skip art school altogether and go to business school, and you will be 10 steps ahead of the game, because that's what we artists excel at, creativity and coloring, but we aren't the best with numbers, and we're not the best with marketing naturally.
For sure. And I was actually that's actually something really interesting that came out of my own personal art journey that echoes what you just said.
Mm.
What I did was an associate's in jewelry design and a bachelor's in business in
Oh,
merchandise, well, not merchandising, marketing.
marketing.
Yeah, so my school, I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City.
Oh,
And the cool thing there is that there are certain 2-year associates like mine where they allow you to get your associates and get your bachelor's, but the second half, so your bachelor's part doesn't have to be 4 years and it can be in a business. So you can combine half in whatever 2-year art major you're doing and then half in
oh,
business. And
that's so great.
it's super useful for like this would have been super useful for me if I had planned on going into business for jewelry, which I almost did, but honestly it just didn't fit with what I was wanting to do.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that in the future when I do pursue business like my own art business, that I think that business degree is worth 10 times what my art degree was because that's really the stuff that you learn the hard way if you don't go to school for it.
Right. Yeah, and I think as far as being self-taught, I think that it's much easier to become a self-taught painter or illustrator or
Mhm.
abstract expressionist than it is to become self-taught business person.
Yes.
Definitely.
It's completely different, and especially if you don't have a mind for numbers and spreadsheets, is very hard to teach yourself that, and that is one of the things that I'm glad I did, like, one smart thing in school
Yeah.
because my parents were scared because 'cause they're like, the the good thing for them is that they didn't really pay for it, they just helped me out by taking out the loans.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm so happy with myself that I didn't end up doing 4 years in art because I think I would be paying that until I
Oh
die.
my
At
gosh.
least with the yeah, at least with the business degree, that has enabled me to work in business and kind of get my return of investment in, you know, those degrees so that later on, and probably sooner than later, I can, pursue my own business.
Right.
But that's really hard to do if you do a 4-year fine arts degree in today's world.
Right. Yeah.
Like
And I mean the legal stuff too. I mean, it doesn't isn't part of a business degree. Don't they teach you kind of the legal aspects of setting up a business as well?
there are some business degrees where they do. I did have my friend, her major dealt a lot in legalities, and she actually did take a design law class.
Oh, yeah. So that's terrific to know because I feel like that's something, a lot of us wouldn't even think of.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous of that one because that is one of those things that does scare me, like in art businesses, because there's a lot that goes into copywriting and stuff like that.
Right. And then, obviously tax evasion is a problem.
Oh my god, yeah, I know. That's like one of those things that I think terrifies people the most,
Oh
taxes.
God, yeah.
How do you handle taxes yourself?
Well, I'm kind of because I'm in my first year, it's not something that I've dealt with my own. I've only,
Mm,
been managing Todd's.
true.
But at the end of the year, what I've been doing, actually, I did this before I even kind of started, my full-time art journey. I started saving receipts, invoices, inventory sheets, anything that was physical record of what I had been doing, what I had been spending and what anything that I had made. And I kind of just keep it in a neat filing folder because I know that someday I'm gonna need it all. Um, and
Mhm.
thankfully, because I've been, recording Todd's finances, I now know how to compile it into a neat little sheet in case the IRS ever comes after me. um, but I also, I'm still in kind of that limbo where I'm not aware what I'm making is being reported. So I have to find that out as well because
Yeah.
obviously, what the IRS expects from you depends on what they know that you've made.
Yeah, that's completely true, but that's definitely a good tip for people who might be starting out
Yeah,
in that kind of world. Keep records of everything. Anytime you spend money on something that has to do with your
yeah.
business, keep that receipt. Like, keep it. And also, like, emailed receipts count too. Print those things out.
Yeah, any checks you receive, anything you spend on art supplies, and anything that you order from online, just keep it. Keep a neat little filing folder with 5 or 6 slots, and just you don't have to organize it completely straight away, but just throw everything in there. You can deal with it later if you're not sure what to do with it now, but just don't throw your stuff out because it's going to be really difficult to remember everything. When it comes time for crunch time, and you don't have the numbers in front of you.
Definitely. Very good tip to have on you if you're definitely trying to do this
Right.
yourself. And so, as a painter, what are you working on right now? Like, what are some things going on in your work right now?
So right now, I had just finished a big commission project. So I'm working on a smaller commission right now, and then I want to start a series of small, kind of 4 by 6 paintings. I have this kind of idea that in the gallery, that people might be more inclined to buy something if they like what you've done and it comes in options. So I kind of want to do a series of
Mm.
similar paintings in either different colors or different styles, and I'm going to do a series of beta fish right now because you know how beta fish come in a bunch of different fin styles and colors and everything. So I'm hoping that someone would see them and be like, "Oh, awesome! I love beta fish, but I wish it was in this color. Oh, there's that color." So I think that mini
Yeah.
series is something I'm going to dabble in. That's probably my next major gallery driven project.
Yeah, I hope you take pictures and post that cuz I actually my boyfriend is in marine biology. He's doing his PhD. So that would totally rock his world.
I absolutely will. Yeah, I try to post everything that I'm working on, even if it doesn't look good yet or if it's in progress. I kind of try to keep the social media feed flowing, so I kind of got to post everything that I got.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and that's good because Um, one of the things that social media unintentionally does is it gives people this wrong impression that what you put on it is exactly who you are
Yeah.
or completely representative of your work. But, most of the time people don't see the works in progress, you know?
Yeah, and people they give a good response to that too. They like that.
They like it because it's not seen that much, you know?
Mm,
I feel like people are surprised when they see, like, that your art is at one point unfinished. It's almost like magic to see that, like, during and then the finished piece.
right. Yeah, and it kind of puts the pressure on you too to finish it because people are, the last thing they saw of it was this like messy, awkward, blocked in like piece of crap. So it's like you really want to finish it and like get the good bits out there.
Yeah, so it can be a good motivator.
Yeah, accountability, personal accountability.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a good word to keep, I feel, as a solo artist. So actually on that note, accountability and kind of sharing your work, what are other things you kind of suggest solo artists to be doing?
I would say if you are working for yourself full time and you intend to financially rely on your craft, there there are a few things you really want to take seriously and you really want to stick to, and that's schedules is probably the biggest thing. Schedules and lists. Even if you have a good memory and even if you think that you can maintain your own productivity, you'd be surprised how difficult it is to do what you love when you have to do it all the time. And
Mhm.
if you're, I don't know how many other people can relate to this, but like me, and nobody made me this way. I just am this way. Being the woman of the house, I have to juggle, my art and my own personal projects with maintaining the apartment and taking care of the pets and, everything like that. And thinking about everything that I have to do in a day to be productive or get done in the week is very overwhelming. But if I break it down, and I write out ahead of time, okay, at this day, at this time, I'm going to be doing this. And then after that, I'm going to get this done. And then the next day, I'm going to do this and that, and so on and so forth. So scheduling it out and knowing when your work time, when your cleaning time, and when your downtime is going to be is astronomically helpful. It kind of takes away the pressure and the weight of not knowing when and how to do things. And it makes you feel like you know what you're going to get done before the week has even happened.
Totally true. I feel like even in my day job, it's like that. Even when you're in a structured job, you need to keep in mind deadlines. But I feel like that's especially important when you're working for yourself. You have to maintain some, at least, semblance of discipline where you give yourself, like you said, a schedule where you can keep track of progress, because I think that's a lot of people's problems working for themselves in art is, I guess it's hard to kind of track where you're going and how far you've come on the work you need to do, because there's no one breathing down your neck telling you
Mhm.
you have to get this done, right?
Right.
And so you kind of have to be that for yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's no threat of being penalized or fired or having your pay docked. Well, your pay will be docked technically because if you don't work, you don't make money. But exactly, you have to discipline yourself. You have to reward yourself. You have to schedule yourself. As much as my studio is right in my apartment, so the kitchen and the living room and the couch and the bed and the TV, it's all within a few steps away from my workspace. So knowing that I have to wait until after I finish X, Y, and Z before I can do any of the down stuff is it's very important for self-discipline and sticking to it, because otherwise, if I start the day and decide then and there when I roll out of bed what I'm going to do that day, I'm probably going to choose the TV.
Oh, of course.
So yeah, it's huge. Get yourself a calendar, get yourself a whiteboard, carry around a little notebook where you keep your lists and your tasks for the day. You'll be surprised like how much it can really, just something as simple as that can change your life.
Definitely. I think that's some really solid advice for those out there who might be just starting off on their solo careers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to wrap things up, I like to ask this fun question to all my
Hmm.
guests. Um, so as artists, most of us we love playing with color. But what are some colors that you barely get to work with but you love?
Colors I barely work with, but I love.
Mhm.
Let's see. Well, I try to work with a limited palette so that I stay proficient in color mixing. So I would say that
Mhm.
I love vibrant pinks and purples and those like hot like red, pink, yellow, oranges. But
Mhm.
I don't have any tubes of that straight color. I have to, if I want to make it, I gotta mix it. So, but as
Yeah.
far as like limiting myself to what colors I make, I don't really set myself a limit. It's kind of more about what subject I'm painting and then what mood I want to convey with that subject. I use color to portray the mood or the temperature or maybe the time of day, whatever it is that needs to be kind of brought forth through that image.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's certain colors that it's just so hard to get them vibrant by mixing them
Mm.
yourself. Like pink for me is one of those. Like, I work in watercolor, and I had to like suck it up and buy like this tube of like the exact pink I wanted because it's just there's just some colors that are impossible to both mix yourself and keep them vibrant.
Yeah, it's good to have. I know what you mean because I struggled with that for a while as well. I found that having a dynamic limited palette, that's what I'd like to call it. I don't know if that's the actual word for it, but a dynamic limited palette really helps, and that is two categories of each primary at least. So you've got, your bright yellow and your earth yellow. You've got your warm red and your cool red, your power blue and your natural blue, your
Mhm.
warm brown and your deep brown, sort of have two ends of the spectrum for each category of color so that when one primary doesn't quite do it, the other one might kind of get you there a little easier.
That's a really good tip. I never even thought of doing it that way. I feel like a lot of people kind of get one of each primary, but we forget that every color has its warm and its cool tone.
Right, yeah, I mean, there's reds that have a lot more pinks and blues, and then there's ones that have a lot more
Mhm.
orange, and you cannot make the exact same colors with both of those reds, so it's good to have them
Heck
both.
no. Yeah, completely agree. And what subject matter do you not get to work with that often, but you'd love to?
I would really love to do more, probably figure paintings and figure art. I'm kind of reluctant to because I know that the gallery I'm in doesn't allow nudes, but I would really love to be able to study that more
Oh.
because painting and drawing people had always intimidated me. And whenever something intimidates you, you should do it more so you can get over it. But I feel like I'm not very good at it yet. I did do a portrait and it came out okay, but I need a lot more practice. And figure painting and figure drawing is a really great way to practice that. So that's definitely something I want to kind of dabble in the near future.
Yeah, same. Drawing people has always intimidated me, but I feel like those are the things that have the best payoff.
Yeah, it's really good skills to build.
And we're about to end this, but do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners?
If I were to summarize in a few final thoughts, I would say don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Chase your dreams and be happy because you only have one life to live. Don't waste it satisfying somebody else. You gotta, as much as it's great to consider other people's needs, you are just as important as everyone else around you. And don't wait until you're on your deathbed to figure that out.
That's such good advice to live by. And where can people find you?
So I am on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram primarily, and I have a website. So if you search Acacia Rogers Art, that's primarily how you would find me, and that's
Mhm.
ACACIAROGERS Art. YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram is where I'm the most active. Oh, the web address is a little different. Let me throw that in there. So that's Acacia Rogers wix.com/artist because how they make you set up your URLs is really weird. So acaciarogers.wix.com/artist is my website, and then that has my links to everything else.
Awesome. Okay. And I will also be listing that down in the show notes and on the website in case you didn't quite catch the spelling. But, anyways, thank you so much for giving us your time. Your story was like super exciting and different. And I always like having people on with journeys like that because I feel like a lot of people get scared thinking that they can only pursue art if they follow this very formulaic route that a lot of other people have taken.
Mm,
But I always like it when people have, their own unique stories to share because everybody has the potential to get to their end goal in 100 million different ways.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Man, that story got me so pumped when I heard it. I've never heard of someone have such a whirlwind, like, life adventure, especially in an art career. And her story just really inspired me because it's like the epitome of just you never know where life can take you in as little as 1 year. And it's something that, we should all be reminding ourselves, especially if we're in life situations that we'd rather not be in right now, or if you think just your dreams will never come true or that things are just not happening for you, just remember that if you put the work in it, little by little, either sooner or later, your dreams are going to come true. It's just that you need to put the work in, be patient, and be open to opportunities, like Acacia said. And so, I'm going to actually go over a few takeaways that you can learn from our talk with Acacia today. So, number one, search for opportunities and be open to them. Acacia had been fired from her job when her adventure started. She didn't really know where she was going, except that she did know what she wanted to do. And due to some unforeseen events that she had no idea were going to happen, and her being open and willing to accept new things that came her way, like all this domino effect of events occurred that enabled her to pursue her passions. 2, to sell your first pieces, why don't you try within your own social circle, like friends and families? We've heard it time and time again, but it's such a nice, low pressure way for you to get started. See if friends or family need commissions done around like holiday seasons, and throughout the year for like birthdays and anniversaries and stuff, because it's a great way for you to build your portfolio and also to build up some testimonials and reviews of your work. And this in the future will serve you because then future customers see that you have experience doing commissions and work for other people. And especially if you can get them to write just a short, testimonial saying how nice it was to work with you, that's even better. It'll take you pretty far. Number 3, look for art co-ops or art associations to begin displaying your art. So this one's especially great for people who would love to display in galleries in the future, because we all think that displaying in galleries is this far-fetched, fantastical idea for the elite artists, but no, you can do it too. Look for a local art association and art co-op and ask them what it takes to display your art in them. In Acacia's case, her local one only took $25 a month to display her art, and then $25 a year to become a member. Guys, that's totally doable. If you're interested in displaying in a gallery, that's great for beginner experience. And last, why don't you try? I know this is going to be kind of an easier said than done situation, but try to find a mentor who is doing what you want to do and incorporate some of the things that they're doing into your own practices. I know, it's kind of hard to say it's easy to say, just go find a mentor, but keep your eyes open and keep yourself open to the opportunities of artists that you meet along the way and you become friends with. And if you find someone that really resonates with you and is open to taking on someone under their wing, definitely consider it. like Acacia was saying, all the classical painters throughout history, they mainly learned through someone else. And, that's just a tried and true method. Being under someone else can really expose you to a lot of practices and things that you wouldn't have otherwise known going at it yourself. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. It was so exciting to hear about such an amazingly fast story unfold, and I'm sure we're going to see great things from Acacia since this has just been her first year, so she's only gotten started, guys. But anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this, and like I said in the beginning of the episode, if you like this episode, please leave a rating and just a quick little review saying how much you liked the episode. And if you're interested in following what the podcast is up to, updates, previews, all good stuff like that, behind the scenes too, you can follow me on Instagram at The Art Journey Pod. And for detailed show notes and links all in one really easy to find place, you can go on the website at theartjourneypodcast.com. And if you're interested in me and my personal work and art, you can follow me on Instagram at Alex Agosto. That's spelled ALEKSAGOSTO. And I also have a website, alexagosto.com. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful time of year, no matter what time of year it is when you're listening. And I will see you again next week. Bye, guys.